Welcome back to the Level Up podcast where big deals meet bold moves. I'm your host, Anthony Nicholas, here with Tyler Pontier. We're diving deep today. Normally we do this call offline, but today we're bringing this to you here from the wonderful All Marketing Group studios. This is an episode filled with lots of information on the local New Jersey real estate, market info, investor info, the kind of insight that is going to make you pause and think, hey, this is something that I can do if you are interested in getting more invested in real estate. So, Tyler, what's up, bud?
How we doing? Great to see you again, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks for jumping on here today, coming out of the office and doing it live.
Love doing it. Yeah, want to be able to be here, and we always have a good conversation, and I definitely want to be able to spread the value and the knowledge. So.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So normally we do this on Zoom once a week, just catch up, talk about what's going on in the market. So let's start there. What's going on in the market right now?
Well, I'm very busy personally, which is not a bad problem to have in this field, right? We're really kicking into the spring market now. So I personally have, some listings I've been working on that will be now coming out, March, April, May. I'm definitely getting more calls than I've been, just with the sun's out, we're past daylight savings. I always joke the Super Bowl's over. So people are really now geared towards thinking, okay, it's springtime. It's time to buy a home. Maybe it's time to sell our home. And, I really usually see a little bit of an uptick right now. So that's always exciting, but that definitely leads to being very busy and needing to be efficient with my time on a daily basis.
That's funny that you say the Super Bowl's over, because I always say the spring season is our Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So if you're in mortgages and real estate, we got 1 week to go until the first quarter's over. And this year, first quarter's definitely been better than last year was. But it's the second quarter, man. Springtime is make or break time.
Right.
So we're going to get a really good feel for what the rest of 2025 is going to look like based on probably these next couple of weeks. And it's encouraging to hear that you are getting the calls and got the listings coming. So tell me more. What's it like to be a buyer in today's market?
When people ask me, how's the market or how's real estate? That could be a very tiered question. I kind of, like you said, I say, well, that depends. Are you selling? Are you buying? Are you investing? Because the answer for those three questions would be vastly different. I think being a buyer right now, you really have to be prepared and educated. I think that's one of the best ways to say it. When I have a consult with a new buyer, it's not just, oh, congrats, you're pre-approved, but it's what do you know about this market? And what do you understand about what it takes to get a home in this market? And I think that's the biggest piece of it, is really setting the expectation for people that there isn't as many homes statistically on the market that we used to see, and we do have a lot of buyers out there. So the good news is I'm seeing success. When you work with me or a lot of the other agents I see out there hustling, they're getting their buyers homes. Does not mean it's the first home or maybe the second or third home, but one of the lines I use is if you're patient yet persistent, you're going to get a home. But again, I really think you do need the ability in this market to go above and beyond when you find a home that you really love. And I think that's the main point. So if you're a buyer, it is a bit more challenging out there than to be a seller, is an example where again, inventory is really low. So if you put your home on the market and it's marketed right and priced right, those are still very important things, it's basically gone.
So staying with buyers for a second,
Right.
We're going to get into sellers in a second. Are you finding that buyers are coming more informed and more educated? Are you finding that buyers are picky right now, more so than they have in the past? Or what's changed about this market?
That's a great question. It's a little bit of a combination. I think certain buyers have the potential to be pickier over others, if that makes sense. I think depending what price range you're in, if it's a very competitive price range, you're going to have to compromise a little bit more than, being in a price point where there might not be as much competition. So I still think, again, the way I say it is if you can find a home that checks 7 of 10 boxes, that's a win. Because we can, we'll get to 8, 9, and 10 if you can do renovations or you can do certain things. But I think it's taking more. So most buyers, to sort of circle back, most buyers I do think have an idea that the market is very competitive. I don't think they understand how competitive it is until we write that first offer. And I say, hey guys, we were 50 grand over ask, but we were 7 of 15 offers. That usually sets the expectation pretty quickly when they see how many offers there were and how many people were, above or below them, in the sense of being able to see where their offer competed with
I
others.
mean, just to unpack that for a second, right? So you're saying the first offer that this buyer writes, they're coming in $50,000 over the asking price, which is not normal for most people to conceptualize. And then you're basically coming back and telling them that actually might not be good enough still, right? So what is the best way to prepare a buyer for this market? And should buyers be pickier if that's going to be the case, right? Like I hear you saying 7 out of 10, which I'm familiar, dude. I understand it. That makes sense. If somebody's like really motivated to buy a house,
Right.
but like if they're okay and don't have to move right now, should they wait until they find 8 or 9 or a home run?
Again, another great question. I'm never pushy in my business. So, like you said, there are the people that need to buy now. So those are the people I'm taking out every week. And if they want a house now, there will be some compromises they may have to make. However, on the flip side, if you have someone that's looking but isn't in a rush, has a good enough situation now, whether they live at home, have a low rate on their current mortgage, etc., then to those people, I would say maybe, let's keep an eye on the market, but maybe waiting is the best opportunity, because I think, again, it's not a super friendly buyer market. So I think if you're not ready to step up and really to go to battle to get a home, then I'd say to potentially wait. The honest truth is I don't see this getting too much better anytime soon. I do see this continuing. Yeah, I see the market staying very a seller's market, at least here in New Jersey, for the indefinite future, shall I say. But I do think there's certain times of the year where I do see better success with clients, that, when the spring market has the most competition, the buyers that, have the ability to wait every fall and winter, those are the buyers that I end up securing a home, because they are able to get an 8 or 9 out of 10 versus a 6 or 7 out of 10 now.
They've out enough of that, wave to know what's what out there, right? Like it's not their first offer. They probably made a few offers and know enough. It's really challenging, and that's really good insight, man. I think the point that I would always tell people, the point that I do tell people when they tell me like I'm not desperate, I'm not in a rush, I'm not gonna compromise, I'm not gonna just buy a house to buy a house, is like, no, you got to get in the game first of all. If you are set on buying a house and becoming a owner, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable right now, and I don't think, to your point, that that's going to get too much better anytime soon. That being said, sitting on the sidelines there is a cost for that. Now, if you're telling me, and this is so funny, this happens all the time, somebody's like, I'm not paying over asking, I'm not, I'm not this, I'm not that. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And tell me if you agree with this. If you don't want to battle other buyers and be in a street fight with other buyers in multiple offer situation, I feel like the number one indicator for that is days on the market. If you see, and again, there's not a lot of them out there, but if you see that something's been listed out there and it's been sitting out there for a while, those are the ones that you're not going to be competing with as many people on, and you may pay around or under the asking price on. Would you agree?
Yeah, I have this conversation all the time, and you and I even have it a lot when we're having trouble getting an offer through for a client, but you and I see that opportunity that they may not see. A lot of times when you have that home in this market that's been sitting for, oh my God, 30 days, which, years ago would have been a new listing. Now it's right. What's wrong with it? What happened? Why is it still on the market? And there can be many factors to that. It might not be the right location for somebody. It might be too much work for somebody. But I think if you find a home that's in a neighborhood you like and has the bones and the size you like, but is a fixer-upper, I think that's a fantastic opportunity. And like you said, that's the home that you're likely going to get at list, or dare I say, maybe even a little bit under,
Right.
without competition. Typically, that's the home people don't want as much.
Now, does
Admittedly,
anybody ever listen to that advice?
not
No,
too often,
never.
to be
The
honest.
next thing that they're doing is making an offer on a house that's been out for a day. And, again, that's why it's always funny to me, because people will typically come in feeling some kind of way about the market, and then they get out there and experience it, and they really, that FOMO kicks in, and they realize, like, all right, I'm not going to settle is right. But in order to not settle, I'm going to have to, deal with this market and
Right.
fight
Gotta
amongst
step up to
all
the
these other
plate either
buyers.
way, right?
Yeah.
And take a swing. I
Yeah.
say, no swing, no hit.
Yeah. So there are no shortage of buyers out there. I think you would agree with that, right?
Correct.
Definitely seeing a pickup now. Hopefully rates continue to come down. That will be a little bit of relief for buyers. That should also open up some more inventory. Switching gears over to the list side, or the seller's perspective of the market. What's the biggest challenge right now for sellers?
I think the biggest challenge for sellers is honestly skewed expectations. Some of them see how the market is and they think they're going to get a number for their home that is unattainable. Or, again, when you list a home, the marketing and the listing price are very important, even in this market.
Is that really true, though?
I do believe that. So the interesting part is I don't think you could ever underprice a home, but I do think you can overprice a home. And a lot of those homes that we were just talking about, those fixer uppers or whatever, may have been a little overpriced at first, but that would be your example then to come in with an offer and get it where, as I say, the market adjusts itself, where the offers come in, that's your fair market value for a home. So it doesn't happen too often, no, but I think that I say when people listen and kind of follow the guidance of the people that are out there in the field every day, you're going to see much more success.
So what? Let's walk. Blah, blah, blah. Start that over again. Take me into the living room of a listing appointment that you're in on a house that is going to be very competitive. Great location, updated, good to go.
Right.
What is the conversation that you're having around that original list price? My main question is, why are we seeing houses being listed for so much less than what the actual market value is?
I think two reasons. I think number one, we're just in a market where buyers are willing to, I don't want to say overpay, but to go above and beyond. So I think when someone goes to list a home, typically some people look at the list price and some people look at the sales price. The way I do it is I kind of take an average, because if you listed a home at 600 and it sold at 750, would the next home list at 600? I don't think it should. I think it should be 650 or 7 based on that one selling at 750. So the conversation that I really have with people, I typically ask, at what number would you be happy if we got this home sold at? And then they'll give me a number. If I feel the number is a little higher than I'm thinking, I say, okay, fair. My goal is to get you that number. However, there is a strategy involved in getting to that number. So that might be, in New Jersey, we have coming soons. I just put one on today. So people aren't allowed to tour the home until this weekend, but it's up and active today. So they can see that there's open houses this weekend. They can get a sneak peek of the home, but they can't get in until this weekend. So that really draws that extra interest, so that come this weekend, our exposure is big time, because, people have been waiting to get in, as an example. So that's one way that people are going to come in and then bid the price up. When I'm speaking to a client, I say, again, okay, so if this is the number you want, in my opinion, this is where we need to list it to get to that. Because I think, when buyers see a home and they see a listing price, they're going to validate it in their head, right? And they're going to start looking at what sold, what else is listed. So if you have one home that's significantly listed over all the others in the areas, but is a comparable home, in my opinion, there needs to be a justification for that. Is the lot bigger? Is there a pool? Did they put in a $200,000 kitchen? So to kind of circle back, I really do believe that the marketing, which is, I say, the way the home's presented, if you have photos and videos, and people are very visual these days. So I think, again, the way the home presents is very important. So again, kind of a long story longer, apologies, but I do think it's a matter of being strategic in the listing price and not underlisting it, but definitely not overlisting it.
So you're
And
not going in there saying, let's put this at, it's supposed to be at 750. Let's put it at 649 so we attract all those 650 and under buyers.
I don't like to do that because I think that's unfair for those.
Why is everybody else
650.
doing that then? Because that is definitely what's happening.
As an agent, I agree. I mean, there's certain towns, the Montclairs and the areas where when I see the listing price compared to the comps, I'm like, you should have added a couple $100K on that, because in Montclair, as an example, pretty much any home that's listed in the 7s, 8s, or 9s has a very good chance of selling for $1 million or higher.
So why are you trying to, drive your seller crazy with 40 offers that are not even going to be close to that number that they told you they wanted? Like, and I'm not saying you do this.
Correct, right.
But this has been going on for years now. This is not something that's, brand new to the market.
Right, and I think certain agents are still doing that. I can't speak for them. I can only speak for the way I do it, which I said is kind of
what you're seeing.
meeting in the
Again,
middle.
How many of these situations have we been in?
Right. A
where
good
we're
amount.
like, all right, yeah, we need to be 200,000 over asking, maybe. Like,
Yeah.
That's what the comps are saying. How do you set that expectation with a new buyer? Obviously, somebody you've been working with for a while might be a little bit easier.
Right.
But a new buyer out the gate, man,
Right.
new parents, that's struggling to find a house and they're quickly outgrowing their current place. How do you set that expectation up front?
What I typically do is, depending on the buyer's price point, we look in a lower price point is sort of step one. So if someone's budget's, $750,000, crazy enough, we're going to start looking at houses in the low 600s, because if there is that competition, they may have to come 100K over, which would still put them at their max budget at a home that's listed in reality nowhere near that max budget.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of stuff that goes into setting up those searches properly for your buyers. And I don't want to get into all your secrets and all of the details of everything that you do, but everybody likes to DIY to a degree, and it's just gotten so much harder to really do that as a buyer today. Now let's switch gears up. What about, again, going back to the sellers? In this market, why would anybody need a realtor, right? Like, it's like you said, man, if you have a nice house in a good location, all you got to do is price it right, and that thing's going to be sold.
Right. That sort of leads me to for sale by owners as an example. And I actually had an appointment at one yesterday with my teammate, and technically, yes, anyone can just list their home and probably sell it in this market. The way I look at it is, so you're selling your largest asset, and you're not a real estate professional. Why wouldn't you want a professional to help guide you through the process? Statistics show that when you hire an agent, even after paying commissions, you're going to net more money. And that's a fact. That's a statistic. That's not just Tyler saying that. And, hey, I say good luck, when I go to a for sale by owner, I say great. But, the difference is when they get all the offers, how do they know what's the best one? Do they understand that it's not just about the number, it's about the terms? How much are they putting down? What are they asking for? When can they close? Like you said, a lot of factors go into it. And in my experience, it can get very messy if you don't have the proper professionals involved. And that's from a real estate attorney to a real estate, a realtor or a broker.
So I don't know if you know this or not. And I'm familiar with the exact study that you're talking about in terms of New Jersey and New York, the net price to for sale by owners versus listed with realtors.
Right.
Hands down, you are going to net yourself more money working with a realtor. Maybe we can link that article. I think it was actually from Zillow.
Multiple,
There were
really. I
multiple,
mean,
but we can maybe link that article here too, because I do think that's interesting. But getting back to my other point, which I totally fucking forgot.
just if you, does it,
Um,
anyone could work without a realtor or sell their home, without one. I don't know if that was the point, but that was
no,
the
was
direction we were headed.
no, it was about something you had said. Fuck. So, not the marketing. Shit, I totally forgot. All right.
Coming soon, list price,
No, it was like something
strategy,
off of
or
what you had just said about the biggest asset
if so,
and
when you're selling your biggest asset, or for a lot of people that's 80% of their retirement, why wouldn't you want a professional helping you out? Let's say you get multiple offers and you have two very similar offers. Do they know that they can go back and negotiate with them? Do they get a good feeling about that person and the agent? Again, it's like I've taken classes in negotiation. So if someone hires me, you're hiring me to put your interests ahead of mine. That's the fiduciary responsibility. I love negotiating for my clients and getting to get them what they deserve.
well, that's really
So,
what aside from all the scheduling and ironing out all of the pictures and the marketing and the details and getting everything to where it needs to be, what you really get paid for is for your ability to negotiate and your ability to connect and have those relationships within all of the important pieces of this transaction.
right,
Is that
exactly.
fair?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So sorry, I'm like a little bit out of it today. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about. Okay. Not necessarily, and I do want to wrap this up because I want to get into your specifics around your, being an investor in this
Right.
market also. But just to wrap up sellers, and I do think this is important, the first time seller. So that category of not first time buyers, but first time sellers who purchased a house 7 years ago, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever, has grown, their family's grown, or has different needs now, wants to be in another school, wants something else in their lives. What's the biggest obstacle or challenge preventing them from moving right now? Is it still the rates?
It seems to be, again, I'll probably hear me say this a lot 'cause it's not always one thing, kind of a combination of things. I think the rates play a huge factor. I think, you and me discuss what we call the quote unquote locked in effect, right? Where someone's got a 2.9 rate, but now they're not happy with the home they bought 5 years ago. And
Yeah.
I mean, not happy meaning they've grown out of it, or it's too big, it's too small, but they're ready for that move. So I think part of it is they are scared to give up a 2.9, a 3, 3.5 rate to get a 6.5 rate. That makes sense. The difference is they've probably got a ton of equity in their home. So that, in my opinion, offsets that a little. There's a chance they could buy down points at closing and get a better rate, or there's a chance they could put more money down on the new home, which is going to lower their monthly payments anyway. So I think that it's a combination of that and just not knowing, kind of to switch back to being a buyer again, of like, are they going to find that next house that has the upgrades they want, the size they want in this market without going 200K over?
Or
I think,
being contingent on
right,
housing?
right. I think they feel intimidated, potentially is a good word. And again, I understand that. And that's the thing too, is, 5, 10 years ago, it was somewhat normal to have a home sale contingency. But now, if you're in a competitive situation and you have a home sale contingency, admittedly, you're the first one out, because why are they going to go with someone that
I know
has to
what you're
sell?
saying, dude. I totally understand, and you're right. But how do we change that language? Because that's what everybody wants to create more inventory. But that is what's preventing us from creating more inventory. So
Right.
how do we have the conversation more around ways that they can be contingent, even though technically they can't be contingent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know we spoke about this a little bit. You know, there's really only a few ways that you can do this. Either you're, going to be getting a big gift from a family member that's going to allow you to put a big down payment and still be able to carry the two mortgages. Um, you can do a bridge loan where you all that equity that you built in your current residence, you can leverage that, and then essentially not only be non-contingent, but you basically can waive your mortgage and your appraisal and everything and go in with an all-cash offer on your next property using that option. There's another way where you can, continue to rent your house and use that money as cash flow to help offset the higher cost. So there are ways to help those first time home sellers. And I really think that's a shift that we all, as professionals, need to really start talking about more amongst each other. So that message starts getting out to the public, not just that you can't buy a house unless you don't have something to sell.
Right, right. Agreed. And I think those are all great options. It's definitely something I talk about if I have people that are, that are on the fence and not sure of their options, because that's typically, my line. When I talk to people, I say, you've got options, you've got leverage if you own a home, that if you don't, you don't have. So a lot of times I'm going to put them in touch with someone like you who's going to say, is there a family member you could borrow from or get a gift from? Hey, I have a bridge loan program that will eliminate the contingency. Are you in the position to still have a down payment and keep your home and rent it out? Like you said, me, I'm a buy and hold guy. So that's always the first option I check with people, because I want to help clients build wealth over time. And I think through buying and owning real estate, that's step one as an example. But again, it's really about giving them those options and helping them make that informed decision. Because I think some will and some won't. And I think the people that are scared to do it, again, maybe not scared, but I understand that. It's your home, it's your money, it's a slight risk. But I think it's a
So
great.
I'll stop you there for 1 second
Yeah.
before I lose this again. And you're on point today, and I'm all over the place. But that's my point. Isn't that the way? Like we said before with buyers, how do you set that expectation up front and get them to submit the offer and go through like you got to tell them maybe up front, like, hey, yeah, no, we're having some success with people who have to sell and are still contingent, with maybe without getting into all of the explanation around the ways. Maybe just get them out there and start showing them and helping them to realize how badly their current house
They
sucks
need, right,
for their needs.
the
And
upside.
then when they start to find things that they really like, they'll figure out the how.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I think motivation is a big factor, right? So I think, like you said, typically, even when people tell me, "Oh, we're not in a rush. We want to wait 6 months." If I take them out for a weekend, they're hooked. I say, because they start seeing homes they like and towns they like, and that's exciting. So I think that motivation is kind of what gets them over that hump. And like you said, that is sort of what I do. Is I always say, "Well, let's go out once or twice. Let's see what's out there. Let's get a feeling for these homes and the neighborhoods. And if you start really liking what you're seeing, we're on our way. You're seeing what you like in your price point, and we're able to go from there. And then you can kind of have that second level conversation of, all right, well, how do we make this work? Here's our options. Here's your leverage. And is that a bridge loan? Is that, renting the home? But it gives them those options. And then at that point, the motivation is going to kind of kick in, right? And they're going to really more heavily consider those options.
Because again, it does come down to motivation, and they might not think those first one or two are worth it, but then eventually they come around. Like
They'll
you said,
find
you
the
might
one.
start now,
Yeah.
and it might not happen till the fall, but that typically is the way the dominoes fall.
Right.
Now, to circle back to something you were just saying about buying and holding, being a long-term real estate investor. What about if somebody just wants to start investing in real estate right now and doing a house hacking where they go and buy a place, live in it for a year or two, and then move on to the next place just isn't necessarily a fit for them. They have a family, whatever the case is. What's it like? Because I know you have personal experience with this, both as a investor and as an agent. What are the challenges right now for investors in this market?
I think the main challenge is just finding the right opportunities. New Jersey is a high tax state, a high buy-in price. So, again, I always say the profits made in the purchase. So I think there's so I mean, it's cut and clear in the sense that a lot of times you need to do enough homework and research when you're purchasing a property that you know it's a decent deal or opportunity, if that makes sense. I say the profit is made in the purchase, because if you overpay out of the gates, you're going to have to do a little bit of catch up, especially with something, like a rental property. So having the numbers line up when investing is very important. And not only that, but understanding the trends of the areas, where prices are going. I think if you're a first time investor and you don't want to be a house hacker, which is kind of what we say in real estate for people, again, that buy a multifamily property, live in one unit and rent the other units. It's an amazing way to do an FHA loan or not put as much down, and have an asset that's making money while you're collecting rent and reducing your mortgage payment. A lot of people then take that and then they buy a second one or a third one. I think if you don't want to do that, there's a couple different options you can do. I know some people that invest in syndicates, which is, you find a group of people that's investing in a new, 500 unit complex in Texas, as an example. And you can be an investor by putting a certain amount in, and you technically get a certain return on that every year. That's one way to do it. But you're only a part owner. So it depends on how you want to do it. I think if you didn't want to be the house hacker again or invest in a syndicate, there's single family and multifamily rental investment opportunities where if you can afford to buy a single family home and rent it out. I'm actually seeing really big success with people that own single family homes and rent them out now, because there isn't a lot of inventory there. I know a lot of people that want to rent a single family home but end up in a multifamily or in a condo because there isn't that opportunity. The other one is to buy a multifamily and just not live in it. You do need a higher down payment to do that, but it also opens the doors for DSCR loans and different opportunities or different ways to purchase that investment. So again, to kind of circle back, just because investing is such a broad topic, I think there's a couple entry points for people if they want to just get in investing. And that would be to be a house hacker, to invest in a syndicate, or to find, again, a multifamily or a single family home that you really feel has a high return, meaning once you purchase it, and depending what your payments are, that you can get it rented out, you can have all your costs covered, and ideally a little bit of cash flow on top of that.
Yeah, I mean that's the goal. And that amount of cash that you have to lay out up front as an investor is greater, and is a bigger requirement than it has been in the past. Not only because prices are higher, but also because mortgages are requiring more down payment, which is fine, but it does make that cash flow part trickier as well. You're not seeing the cash flow that you would like on a huge upfront investment as soon as you would like to. But then what happens 5 years down the road when you factor in the appreciation that you've made in owning that house and having somebody living there paying your mortgage, even though you're not, cashing that dividend every month necessarily, but it's breaking even. 5 years from now, all of a sudden, that rent's gone up 25, 35%. The actual value's gone up the same, if not more, right? Now you're waking up feeling really good about making that initial investment. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, New Jersey is a state where, depending on where you bought, what type of investment it is more of it's not a get rich quick. It's more of a build wealth over time type of thing, where ideally, again, if managed and done right, every year you should be in a little bit of a better position. So,
Oh, yeah.
I know some tenants that don't raise the rent a lot, but they don't necessarily, need to if they don't have a mortgage, and they have great tenants that take care of the property, but they're getting tons of equity that way. And then you also could raise the rent. So again, your rental income is higher while the property's gaining equity year over year. I think it's when done right, I say that, importantly, it's
Of course.
it's a great opportunity.
So what about, speaking of get rich quick, with all this, incoming jobs and this Netflix effect that's happening around here, Apple Studios. What is some of the opportunities that you're hearing about or seeing as a byproduct of, maybe New Jersey becoming Hollywood East?
Still sort of in the initial stages. I admit I haven't heard too much, but I do think that, when people say I'm always looking for the next area. When I say that, I mean, where is the next area where there could be a boom? So you're going to have a Netflix studio in Fort Monmouth that's going to employ thousands of people. So the towns around that studio, where do you think those people are going to live? Right there. So that's a time when now is a good time again to buy a condo and rent it, or buy a single family home and be able to rent it. Again, same thing. You got the Apple studios going in. So all those towns around those big businesses are going to see a little bit of a boom. So as an example, you got to get in now though, before everyone comes and before it's too late. But that is an example of an opportunity where, we didn't years ago, it's somewhat new that we're getting the Netflix and the Apple studio, but I think that's amazing for New Jersey, and especially those counties, because Monmouth counties are already pretty big. You've got the Jersey Shore and all those things, but I do feel inland a little bit, Homedale, some of those towns are going to see a real nice boost when these studios come here. And again, I think getting in early now before that boom happens, that's the opportunity to get in and to invest and to see a bigger return than you would once the studios are here, once they're fully, employed.
Oh yeah, it's too late then.
Right. So,
all right, we're gonna definitely keep an eye on that, and I want you to just talk a little bit about your latest adventure, right? For those of you that don't know, Tyler's an amazing family man, great father, husband, great friend, amazing realtor. Just recently, ran and was elected as the town council.
Yep, borough council. Yes.
Borough council for Morris Plains.
Yes.
So what's that been like?
It's been really exciting. It's a lot of work, and I've really enjoyed not only getting to work with the council and the mayor, but in the year that when we ran last year, we canvassed the neighborhood, and it was really fun and rewarding to get to talk to all the residents and hear what their concerns were, and to think that if elected, we'd have the ability to make some of those changes, or to put some of those things into action. So I feel very flattered and honored to be in the position that I'm in.
Where the hell did this even come from?
It's tough
Was
because
this like something that you had always been aspiring to, or how did this happen?
So not really. I went to a couple kind of meetings around the town, and a couple years ago when we're sort of learning how things were, and it seemed that there was a need to kind of pass the baton, for a lack of better terms, where the residents just wanted some kind of newer, younger people as leaders and involved in the council, and people that they felt really had the progressive mind that's going to keep Morris Plains an awesome place to be, because it's such an amazing town, and we want to keep it that way, and continue to make it even better. So it wasn't necessarily something I had planned. It did come a little bit more out of left field, but I really felt called to action as I started learning about the township, and then when I found out that they needed someone to run, it just felt like the right fit, if that makes sense. I just said, this is something I think I can do. It's something I think I can do well, and I'd love to be able to stand up for my wife, my family, my daughters, and to be a local leader and be someone that people can look up to and know and trust. And I'm just Tyler. I'm just one guy, but again, if I can use my knowledge and my life experiences to bring a change and to make a positive impact on people, that means everything to me.
Hell yeah. No, I mean, I think that's really great insight, and I've, as always, enjoyed our time. We're gonna circle back because I have a couple of things that I want to keep on the front burner here, especially around this spring market. So, as wrapping this up for Tyler and I goes, we are not professional speakers or podcasters. He's a great realtor. I'm a mortgage lender. We got you covered for any of your real estate needs. If you're still watching or listening to this, definitely smash that like button. Let us know in the comments if you got something of value out of here. That's really why we're trying to do this for you guys. And hopefully, just hopefully, we can help one more family, one more person to become an owner in real estate because it is the average, everyday American's number one way to build wealth in this country. Thanks a lot, folks.